Hello, what happens to the human mind after prolonged exposure to toxic behavior? It is a question that goes beyond simple emotional hurt. When someone navigates a relationship, whether familial, romantic, or professional, that is defined by manipulation or instability, the brain actually adapts. It rewires itself for survival. Today, we are going to look at the psychology of those who have walked away from these dynamics. We aren't looking at the toxicity itself, but rather at the fascinating and often complex aftermath on the human psyche. One of the first and most common psychological shifts is the development of hypervigilance. Imagine living in a house where the gravity constantly changes. You would learn to never walk blindly. You would constantly test the floor before taking a step. People who have dealt with toxic environments often develop an acute ability to read microexpressions and shifts in tone. They become experts at sensing the mood in the room. While this can be a superpower in terms of empathy, it is also exhausting. The nervous system stays in a state of high alert, constantly scanning for threats even when safety has been established. If you are finding this analysis insightful so far, please take a second to hit the like button. It helps this information reach more people who might be trying to understand these very mechanisms. Moving deeper, we often observe a fascinating conflict between high resilience and self-doubt. This usually stems from the psychological concept of gaslighting, where a person's reality is repeatedly denied. Long after the toxic dynamic has ended, the individual may struggle to trust their own perception of events. They might find themselves constantly asking for validation on small decisions or over-explaining their actions. This isn't a lack of intelligence, it is a conditioned response. The brain was trained to believe that its internal compass was broken, and recalibrating that compass takes time. Another significant psychological trait is the fawn response. We all know about fight or flight, but fawning is the response where a person tries to appease a threat to avoid conflict. For someone recovering from toxicity, this can manifest as chronic people-pleasing or an inability to say no. They may feel physically anxious when setting a boundary because in their past, boundaries were met with punishment. They learned that being easy was the only way to be safe. However, it is important to note that this psychology is not permanently fixed. It is a state of adaptation. If you know someone who struggles with these exact feelings, consider sharing this video with them. Sometimes simply knowing that these behaviors are normal responses to abnormal situations can be incredibly healing. Now let's look at the flip side, the immense strength that is often forged in this fire. Psychologists often observe that people who have moved past toxic dynamics possess a high level of emotional intelligence and introspection because they were forced to analyze every interaction to survive. They often become deeply empathetic leaders and friends. They understand the value of peace and stability in a way that others might take for granted. There is also a phenomenon known as post-traumatic growth. This describes the positive psychological change experienced as a result of adversity. Once the individual begins to heal the self-doubt, they often emerge with a very clear definition of their values. They become very selective about who they allow into their inner circle. This isn't bitterness, it is wisdom. It is the psychology of someone who knows the cost of their energy and refuses to spend it cheaply. The journey usually involves shifting from an external locus of control where they feel things happen to them to an internal locus of control where they realize they have the agency to shape their future. If you are currently on this path, understand that the traits we discussed today, the overthinking, the hesitation, the hyper-awareness, are not flaws. They are evidence that you adapted. They are evidence that you survived. The next step in your psychology is simply teaching your brain that the war is over and it is safe to rest. Thank you for spending your time here today. If this video helped you understand your own mind or the mind of someone you care about a little better, please consider subscribing to the channel. We explore the human mind every week, and we would love to have you with us. Take care of yourself, and see you in the next video.